The relentless rhythm of New York City in the early 1900s was a symphony of bustling energy and stark contrasts. From her modest apartment window in the heart of a vibrant yet subtly oppressive Eastern district, Naomi Jenkins observed this world with an intellect that far outstripped her 28 years, and a quiet grace that belied the relentless pressures she faced. She was a woman of profound resilience, her spirit unbent by the pervasive, subtle discrimination that colored every aspect of her life. While the city roared with ambition and opportunity, for Naomi, it often felt like a grand, indifferent machine designed to keep certain gears from ever truly turning. Her apartment, a compact space on the third floor of a brownstone, was a sanctuary of order and quiet dignity. Though small, every item within its walls was meticulously cared for, reflecting a deep respect for the few possessions she owned. The worn Persian rug, inherited from her grandmother, was always swept clean, its faded patterns still holding a ghost of forgotten stories. Books, her most treasured companions, lined a makeshift shelf fashioned from stacked wooden crates, their pages often dog-eared at passages of classical literature, or, more surprisingly, detailed agricultural treatises. Dinner was a solitary ritual, a carefully prepared plate of stewed vegetables and a piece of crusty bread. The sounds of neighboring families, their laughter and lively chatter, drifted through the thin walls, a distant muffled counterpoint to the profound silence of her own meal. Naomi ate slowly, savoring each bite, her mind often miles away, conjuring images of fertile soil and verdant fields, a stark contrast to the grimy alleyways visible from her window. This quiet routine wasn't born of melancholy, but of necessity and a deep-seated self-reliance. She meticulously mended her own clothes, each stitch a testament to her precise nature and an unwavering pride in her appearance, no matter how simple. Her meticulousness extended to her mind as well. She often spent her evenings by the soft glow of a kerosene lamp, poring over complex diagrams of crop rotation or memorizing the Latin names of rare botanical species. Her world, though confined, was rich with intellectual curiosity, a testament to a spirit that refused to be diminished by its circumstances. One sweltering afternoon, a moment of profound unfairness shattered the quiet rhythm of Naomi's solitary existence, forcing her from the shadows. She was walking home from her tedious, underpaid job at a textile factory, a job where her sharp mind was criminally underutilized, relegated to repetitive tasks, her talents unseen, when she noticed a commotion. An elderly street vendor, a kind-faced woman named Mrs. Elsie Dubois, known for her exquisite handmade lace, was being aggressively harassed by a trio of well-dressed, boorish customers. They were loudly accusing her of overcharging them, their voices dripping with a condescension that bordered on cruelty, though Naomi knew Mrs. Dubois to be scrupulously honest. The scene was ugly, drawing a small, uncomfortable crowd. Most onlookers averted their gaze, unwilling to involve themselves. Naomi, however, felt a familiar surge of indignation, a deep-seated revulsion at injustice. Her heart pounded, a quick, nervous rhythm. Stepping forward meant drawing attention, risking the very dismissal she so often endured. Yet the sight of Mrs. Dubois' trembling hands, her face etched with distress, compelled her. With a deep breath, Naomi quietly approached the group. Her voice, though soft, carried an unexpected clarity that cut through the cacophony. "Excuse me," she interjected calmly, her gaze steady and direct. "I believe there might be a misunderstanding. I observed your transaction. Mrs. Dubois quoted you the price for the larger piece of lace, which you agreed to. The smaller piece, which you now hold, is indeed less expensive, but you did not specify it until after the larger piece was cut. It seems to be an honest error of communication, not an overcharge." The customers, momentarily stunned by her unexpected intervention and articulate composure, faltered. One of them, a stout man with a booming voice, turned on her. "And who are you, girl? Meddling where you don't belong." Naomi met his gaze unflinchingly. "I am a witness to the transaction, sir, and a believer in fair dealings." She then turned to Mrs. Dubois, her voice softening. "Perhaps, Mrs. Dubois, we could offer them the smaller piece at its price, and perhaps a small token for the misunderstanding?" Mrs. Dubois, her eyes wide with surprise and gratitude, nodded meekly. Naomi's quick thinking, her calm logic, and her inherent courage to speak truth to power de-escalated the situation. The customers, disarmed by her unexpected intellect and quiet dignity, grudgingly paid for the smaller piece and left, muttering. Mrs. Dubois, tears welling in her eyes, clasped Naomi's hand. "Thank you, child. You are truly a blessing." This quiet act of defiance and compassion, this demonstration of Naomi's inherent goodness and strength, cemented her as a character worthy of the reader's deepest empathy and unwavering support. It was her profound save the cat moment, ensuring that every challenge she faced hereafter would be met with an audience rooting for her success. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard in her bedroom, a secret world existed. It was a worn, leather-bound journal, its pages brittle with age, filled not with idle musings but with intricate, meticulous botanical sketches and dense, precise notes. These weren't childish doodles. They were the work of a highly discerning mind, detailing the life cycles of various plants, the optimal conditions for different crops, and the complex interactions between soil, nutrients, and natural remedies. The journal was a legacy from her grandmother, Seraphina Jenkins, a woman revered in their small, close-knit rural community of Willow Creek, though her genius as an herbalist and farmer was never formally acknowledged by the wider world. Seraphina, known affectionately as the Root Whisperer, had possessed an almost mystical connection to the land, her hands capable of coaxing life from the most stubborn soil. Naomi had inherited that connection, that profound, almost encyclopedic knowledge of botany and soil science. Her fingers, though slender from city life, bore faint, almost imperceptible calluses, subtle marks from years spent alongside her grandmother in the rich, dark earth of Willow Creek. She would spend hours poring over the journal, tracing the delicate lines of a sunflower's roots, or deciphering her grandmother's cryptic notes on crop rotation that yielded astonishing harvests. This journal, this inherited knowledge, was a deeply private sanctuary, a place where Naomi's mind truly came alive, revealing a hidden talent and a forgotten lineage, a profound seed of mystery waiting to bloom. She guarded it fiercely, knowing that such knowledge was often dismissed or misunderstood in her current urban environment. Naomi's life in the city, though intellectually stimulating, was also riddled with constant, insidious reminders of her place in the societal hierarchy. This was acutely felt in her interactions with individuals like Mr. Alastair Finch, a prominent, exceedingly wealthy businessman and philanthropist, whose influence permeated the very fabric of the city. Outwardly, Mr. Finch was the epitome of charm and generosity, a man who spoke eloquently of progress and opportunity. Yet beneath the polished veneer, he harbored deep-seated, often unconscious prejudices. He viewed society through a lens of utility and rigid class structures, subtly dismissing anyone who didn't fit his narrow definition of proper or valuable. He saw people through the prism of their perceived background and superficial presentation. Naomi, in his eyes, if he noticed her at all, was simply another face in the anonymous working class, an invisible cog in the city's vast machinery, certainly not someone of substance or intrinsic worth. He embodied the misguided antagonist, a man whose inherent biases would, in time, be profoundly challenged. His casual condescension, though never directed at her explicitly, was woven into the fabric of his interactions, a constant, subtle reminder of the invisible barriers that separated their worlds. Despite the intellectual richness of her inner world, Naomi's reality in the city was one of profound, quiet desperation. Her meager wages barely covered the rent for her tiny apartment and the simple food that sustained her. The endless cycle of tedious work and solitary evenings offered no escape, no genuine prospect of a future where her intelligence and dignity could truly flourish. She yearned for something more, a life rooted in purpose, connected to the earth, a place where her knowledge could blossom. Her solace and her only glimmer of hope lay in the faded, crinkled pages of a local newspaper's classified section. There, nestled amongst advertisements for various goods and services, were notices from the burgeoning West, calls for mail-order brides. Naomi meticulously pored over these ads, her heart a tangled knot of apprehension and yearning. She wasn't seeking romance in the conventional sense, not initially. She sought escape, a chance for a new beginning, a partner who valued substance over superficiality. She specifically gravitated towards advertisements from farmers or ranchers, men who sought a partner to work the land. She clung to the belief that the earth, in its raw honesty, was blind to color, that a shared connection to the soil might bridge the vast chasm of prejudice that had defined her life. She dreamed of a simpler existence, a life of honest labor under an open sky, and perhaps, just perhaps, a true partner who would see beyond the surface, recognizing the depths of her mind and the quiet strength of her soul. This desperate yearning, this meticulous search for a future beyond the city's stifling confines, unwittingly set the stage for the dramatic upheaval that would soon shatter her carefully constructed world of quiet despair. The seeds of her destiny, once planted in the rich earth of Willow Creek, were now ready to be transplanted, even if the journey westward seemed fraught with peril and uncertainty. Naomi Jenkins, usually a bastion of quiet composure, found her meticulously constructed world beginning to unravel. For months, she had pored over the mail-order bride advertisements, each hopeful query a fragile prayer whispered into the vast unknown of the West. She had crafted letters with painstaking care, describing her quiet nature, her industrious spirit, and, crucially, detailing her profound knowledge of agriculture, hoping that her practical skills would outweigh the societal prejudices she knew awaited her. She had even managed to secure a small, faded tintype portrait of herself, a dignified, unsmiling image, knowing that her appearance would be scrutinized. Her deepest aspiration was to find a home rooted in the land, a connection that she believed transcended superficialities, a shared purpose with a man who truly saw beyond the color of her skin. She yearned for the honest work of farming, for the scent of rich soil, a world away from the stifling urban confines where her intellect was wasted and her dignity constantly chipped away. But the replies, when they came, were like shards of ice shattering her fragile hopes. The first rejection arrived in a stiff, formal envelope, its contents brief and chillingly impersonal. "Thank you for your inquiry," it read, "but we find your background unsuitable for our client's needs." The language was coded, but the message was clear. Naomi felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. She told herself it was just one. Then came the second, more explicit. "While we appreciate your forthrightness regarding your agricultural experience," the letter stated bluntly, "our client explicitly requested a Caucasian bride. We regret to inform you that we cannot proceed with your application." Naomi's breath caught in her throat. She crumpled the letter, her vision blurring. The explicit mention of her colored status was a direct assault on her self-worth, a stark reminder that despite her capabilities, her race remained an insurmountable barrier in a world that refused to see beyond it. The rejections piled up, each one a fresh wound. Some were polite, even apologetic, skirting the issue with vague terms like "not a good fit" or "cultural differences." Others were brutally direct, using dehumanizing language that made her skin crawl. One letter, cruelly succinct, contained only 2 words: "Too dark." Naomi would sit by her window, clutching the latest rejection, watching the city lights twinkle, each one a distant, mocking star in a universe that seemed determined to deny her a place. Her fragile hopes shattered, leaving behind a bitter residue of despair. She had sought a farmer, a rancher, someone tied to the earth, believing that their connection to the land might offer a path free from the racial prejudice she faced daily. Instead, she found it amplified, staring back at her from the cold, impersonal words on paper. This cascade of rejections was a deeply personal blow, undermining her sense of self-worth and leaving her with a profound, aching sense of despair. The life she so desperately yearned for, a life of purpose and belonging, seemed irrevocably out of reach. A wave of profound despair and resignation washed over Naomi. For days she moved through her routine like a ghost, her meticulous habits the only anchor in a sea of emotional turmoil. The thought of giving up entirely became a persistent whisper in her mind. Why bother? Why expose herself to further pain and humiliation? The city, with its anonymity, beckoned as a retreat, a place where she could simply fade into the background, remain unseen, unjudged. She considered abandoning her dreams of the West, of farming, of a partner, retreating into an even deeper solitude than before, convinced that her race would forever be an insurmountable barrier to finding acceptance and a true home. The familiar fear of public scrutiny, of being highlighted only for her difference, was a powerful deterrent. Her instinct was to remain unseen, to avoid any further attempts that might lead to more crushing rejections. Yet, amidst the suffocating despair, a stubborn, resilient flicker of defiance ignited within her. It was a faint glow at first, easily overlooked, but it pulsed with an unwavering strength. She thought of her grandmother, Seraphina, the root whisperer, a woman who had faced far greater hardships with unwavering dignity. Naomi remembered Seraphina's quiet battles against skepticism, her unwavering belief in the inherent value of the earth and the quiet strength of those who worked it. She recalled a specific passage from her worn botanical journal, an entry detailing how the most resilient plants often grew in the harshest soils, finding ways to draw nourishment where others saw only barrenness. "The land does not judge the color of your hand, only the honesty of your labor," Seraphina had written, her elegant script filling the aged pages. This profound wisdom resonated deep within Naomi, stirring a quiet defiance against the rejections that sought to define her by what she was, rather than who she was. She refused to let these superficial, prejudiced rejections define her future entirely. She would not be broken. Her spirit, though wounded, refused to be extinguished. Driven by this renewed, desperate resolve, Naomi embarked on a final, fervent search. Her fingers, trembling slightly, sifted through the remaining mail-order bride notices, each one feeling heavier than the last. Most were formulaic, promising fair-skinned brides for respectable gentlemen. Then, tucked away on a crumpled, almost overlooked page, she stumbled upon a peculiar advertisement. It was simple, almost rustic, devoid of the flowery language and flattering promises of the others. It was from a prosperous, yet isolated wheat farmer in the remote western plains, a man named Elijah Vance. The notice was handwritten, crudely printed, and surprisingly direct. Seeking a capable, honest partner, willing to work the land and build a future, practicality and diligence valued above all. Crucially, there was no mention of race, no request for specific physical attributes, no coded language about suitability. It simply sought a partner for work, for life on the land. It suggested a potential blindness to conventional prejudices, or perhaps a focus on practicality that transcended such superficialities. For Naomi, it was a lifeline, a desperate final act of hope. It felt like a direct appeal to her core being, to her knowledge, to her very essence, unburdened by the weight of her appearance. She immediately felt a deep, almost primal connection to the anonymous farmer's simple, honest request. With renewed purpose, Naomi meticulously drafted her response. She chose her words with care, not masking her identity, but emphasizing her practical skills and deep-seated love for the land. She attached her portrait, the same dignified tintype that had invited rejection from so many others. But this time, her accompanying letter didn't merely state her desire for a home. It detailed her extensive agricultural knowledge, her grandmother's teachings, her ability to cultivate even the most challenging soils. It was a leap of faith, a final, desperate gamble on a future she was beginning to believe might be forever denied to her. She chose this seemingly humble, colorblind farmer over the more conventional, prejudiced suitors, compelled by a raw, primal need for a future and a deep-seated connection to the earth. This audacious decision to send her portrait and a letter revealing her true capabilities was her point of no return. It was her last resort, an act of sheer will that made it utterly impossible for her to retreat to her previous life of quiet despair and stifled potential. The die had been cast. Her fate now lay in the hands of a stranger in the vast, unforgiving West. Unbeknownst to Naomi, her audacious attempt to find a future in the West became a brief, amusing anecdote in the rarefied circles of Eastern society. Mr. Alastair Finch, the prominent, subtly prejudiced businessman, was at his weekly luncheon at the exclusive Merchants Club, surrounded by fellow titans of industry. The conversation drifted to the unusual trends of the West, and a mutual acquaintance, a Mr. Percival Blackwood, casually mentioned a curious development. "You know that Jenkins girl, Alistair? The one from the textile factory, always with her nose in those ridiculous plant books? Heard she's gone and sent off for a mail-order husband out west. Can you imagine?" Blackwood chuckled, dabbing his lips with a linen napkin. "Such a desperate sort, aren't they? And for her, well, one can hardly imagine anyone wanting that particular arrangement." Mr. Finch, ever the picture of refined amusement, merely raised an eyebrow. He allowed a faint, knowing smile to grace his lips, a subtle confirmation of his agreement with Blackwood's implicit condescension. "Indeed, Percival, one does wonder what kind of match could possibly be found for someone of that background." He dismissed the thought with a casual, almost imperceptible wave of his hand, a confirmation of his inherent classism and racism. He saw Naomi's ambition as futile, even laughable, a desperate act by someone fundamentally beneath his notice. To him, her attempt to elevate herself was a comical reaffirmation of his belief in rigid social strata, a testament to the fact that some people, by virtue of their birth and race, were simply destined for a lower station in life. Her quiet intellectual pursuits, her profound knowledge, were entirely lost on him, swallowed by his unshakable conviction in a world where everything and everyone had its predetermined place. The idea of her finding acceptance, let alone success, in the rough-and-tumble West was simply an amusing fantasy, a fleeting diversion in his otherwise perfectly ordered universe. The journey westward was a stark transition for Naomi, each mile pulling her further from the stifling familiarity of the city and deeper into an unforgiving yet profoundly beautiful landscape. The train rattled and swayed, carrying her across vast plains, through towering mountain passes, until finally, depositing her in a dusty, windswept town that served as the gateway to the vast stretches of farmland. This was not the manicured, orderly East. This was raw, untamed land, a place where survival was earned, not given. The air hummed with a different kind of energy, one born of sun and soil and a rugged independence. She spotted him immediately amongst the small cluster of people gathered by the station house. Elijah Vance was not the imposing, robust figure she had half expected of a wealthy farmer. He was a man in his late 30s, his frame lean and weathered, etched by years of sun and hard work. His clothes were simple, practical, dusted with the fine, reddish soil of the plains. His eyes, though initially guarded, held a deep sadness, a quiet melancholy that resonated with a familiar ache within Naomi. He seemed surprised by her elegance, by the quiet dignity in her bearing that transcended her simple traveling dress. His initial reaction was not one of outright rejection, but of genuine, almost bewildered surprise. Their first meeting was heavy with unspoken expectations, an awkward silence stretching between them as they took each other in. "Naomi Jenkins?" Elijah's voice was a low rumble, worn smooth like river stones. He cleared his throat, a faint flush rising on his cheeks. "Elijah Vance. Welcome to Harmony Ridge." Before they could truly navigate the delicate dance of their arranged introduction, the distant clang of a frantic bell shattered the nascent quiet of their meeting. A cloud of agitated dust rose from the town square, accompanied by the panicked shouts of men. A local crisis, dire and immediate, was unfolding. A vital communal crop, the valley's lifeblood, wheat mostly, but also the fledgling corn, was failing. An insidious blight, or perhaps an unseasonable, prolonged drought, had begun to turn the verdant fields into brittle, yellowed husks. The local farmers, sturdy men hardened by seasons of labor, were at a complete loss, their livelihoods, their very way of life, threatened. They clustered together, their faces grim, their hands running through parched soil or pulling at withered stalks. Elijah, his brow furrowed with concern, muttered, "The blight. It's worse than we thought." He looked torn, his attention split between his expected bride and the impending ruin of his community. Naomi's keen eyes immediately went to the samples of withered crops being passed around by the frantic farmers. Her mind, honed by years of studying her grandmother's journal, began to race, dissecting the visual cues. The specific pattern of discoloration, the brittle texture of the leaves, the faint, almost imperceptible fungal spores clinging to the stalks, all spoke a clear, albeit complex, language to her. She saw not just dying plants, but a solvable puzzle. She witnessed their desperation, saw her potential new life in this unforgiving yet beautiful land crumble before it even had a chance to truly begin. Without thinking, compelled by an instinct to mend, to heal, to nurture, she found herself tentatively stepping forward. "Excuse me." Her voice, though soft, possessed an undeniable clarity, honed by years of quiet study. The farmers, startled, turned to face her, their faces a mixture of confusion and thinly veiled suspicion. A city woman, and explicitly a black woman, daring to speak on matters of the land. I believe I recognize this particular blight," Naomi continued, her gaze sweeping over the samples. She didn't boast, didn't try to impress. She simply offered knowledge, a quiet solution to a shared problem. "It's a specific strain of Puccinia graminis, exacerbated by the recent fluctuations in humidity and soil pH. Your traditional copper sulfate treatments will be ineffective. In fact, they may be worsening it." A collective murmur rippled through the farmers. One burly man scoffed. "What would a city woman know about our crops, missy? You just stepped off the train." Naomi met his gaze, unflinching. "My grandmother was Serafina Jenkins of Willow Creek. She called this the red rust and had methods for it. The key is not to kill the fungus directly, but to restore the soil's natural microbial balance and boost the plant's inherent immunity. A concoction of diluted apple cider vinegar and a specific type of fermented nettle tea, applied at dusk, can change the soil pH and create an environment inhospitable to Puccinia while strengthening the plant from within." She paused, then added, "And for the current drought conditions, a deeper, less frequent watering method, directed to the root systems, rather than surface sprinkling, will encourage deeper root growth, making the plants more resilient." Her words, delivered with a calm, nuanced precision, were a testament to her esoteric botanical knowledge and the practical wisdom gleaned from her grandmother's teachings. She wasn't just guessing. She was offering a carefully considered solution. Only Elijah Vance, initially skeptical like the others, truly listened. He watched her, captivated. He saw past her race and gender, past the conventional assumptions. He saw the genuine insight in her words, the clear, unshakable confidence in her eyes as she spoke of soil pH and microbial balance. His own face, usually guarded, began to show a flicker of hope, then profound interest. He was desperate for a solution, and her words, unconventional as they were, resonated with a deeper, intuitive truth he hadn't known he sought. He turned to the other farmers, his voice firm. "We have nothing to lose. Let her try. Her ideas, they make a strange kind of sense." The local farmers, though still deeply suspicious of a city woman or a black woman daring to offer advice on their sacred land, grudgingly agreed to allow her to demonstrate her ideas. They were desperate, their faces a mix of doubt, faint curiosity, and residual prejudice. The news of the strange city woman, a mail-order bride, trying to fix the blight, quickly reached the ears of Mr. Cyrus Thorne, the wealthiest and most influential rancher in the valley, and a bitter rival of Elijah Vance. Thorne was a man whose prosperity was built on ruthless ambition, a vast network of connections, and a profound, almost pathological belief in his own superiority. He was a towering figure, both physically and socially, his booming laugh and easy charm masking a heart of stone and a deeply ingrained racism. He despised Elijah Vance, seeing his quieter, more ethical farming practices as a weakness to be exploited. Thorne, astride his magnificent horse, rode into town, his face contorted in a sneer. He had heard about Elijah's little colored bride and her hocus-pocus plant magic. He scoffed, loudly, for all to hear. "What idiocy! A city woman, a black woman, trying to teach us how to farm? She'll bring bad luck to the land, I tell you. She knows nothing but tea parties and gossip. Trusting such a person with our crops, Elijah, is a sign of your desperation, not her competence. It's an urban interloper meddling in affairs she doesn't understand." He laughed, a harsh, derisive sound, and deliberately spread rumors about Naomi's city ignorance and the folly of trusting someone of her background. His every word was designed to undermine her credibility, to ignite racial prejudice among the already wary farmers, and to further destabilize Elijah's struggling farm, cementing his own power in the valley. Thorne, the clear Type A antagonist, saw this as an exquisite opportunity to not only destroy Elijah's reputation, but also to crush any hope of Naomi finding a place in this community. Despite Thorne's active undermining and the skeptical glances of the local farmers, Naomi quietly set to work. She moved with an innate confidence, her hands, accustomed to the delicate precision of her botanical sketches, now working the rich earth. She carefully mixed the nettle tea, her movements precise, almost ritualistic. She showed the farmers exactly where and how to apply the mixture, not just to the leaves, but directly to the soil around the roots. She patiently explained the reasoning behind her unconventional watering technique, demonstrating how to dig small, shallow trenches to direct water more effectively. She worked tirelessly, from dawn until dusk, ignoring Thorne's mocking laughter and the watchful, skeptical eyes. And then, slowly, miraculously, her methods began to work. Within days, the first signs of recovery appeared. The yellowed stalks began to regain a faint green hue. The brittle leaves softened, unfurling new, healthier shoots. The mysterious blight, which had ravaged their fields, began to recede, leaving behind a verdant promise of life. It was a visible, undeniable testament to her unique, unconventional knowledge. This initial success was a powerful breakthrough, validating her expertise and beginning to earn her the wary, then growing respect of the local farmers, whose livelihoods had been saved. Most importantly, it garnered the profound, dawning admiration of Elijah Vance, who witnessed her quiet competence firsthand, seeing not just a woman of color, but a woman of immense talent and unwavering strength. His initial skepticism melted away, replaced by an unmistakable sense of wonder. As Naomi worked the soil, her hands deftly applying her knowledge, the simple tarnished silver ring on her finger, usually hidden by her long sleeves, caught the sunlight. It was a modest, unassuming piece, its intricate design almost worn smooth by time. Elijah Vance, focused intently on her movements, caught a fleeting glimpse of it. Something about its unique design, a stylized sunflower with intertwined roots, stirred a faint, half-forgotten memory, a feeling of familiarity. It was almost a recognition, a whisper from the past, though he couldn't quite place it. He dismissed it for the moment as a common rustic design, a pleasant but ultimately insignificant detail. He was too caught up in the wonder of her work, not yet realizing the profound significance of the unassuming piece of jewelry, or the legendary lineage it represented. The truth, like the deeper roots of a resilient plant, was slowly, quietly beginning to unfurl, waiting for its full bloom. Naomi's quiet triumph over the blight sent ripples through Harmony Ridge, stirring a potent mix of awe and resentment. The local farmers, whose crops had begun to flourish under her unconventional guidance, now looked at her with a dawning respect, their initial skepticism giving way to grudging admiration. But the whispers of her success only fueled the fury of Mr. Cyrus Thorne. His vast ranch, Thorne Estates, sprawled across the most fertile lands in the valley, a testament to his ruthless ambition and cutthroat practices. He saw Naomi not as a savior, but as an affront, an insolent challenge to his unshakable authority. A black woman, a newcomer from the city, succeeding where established farmers had failed. It was an unbearable humiliation, a direct threat to his carefully constructed dominion. His sneering dismissals intensified, laced with venomous rumors about city magic and unnatural methods designed to turn the community against her. His rage simmered, finally boiling over into a public declaration that would shake the very foundations of Harmony Ridge. The annual county fair, a revered event steeped in generations of tradition and fierce agricultural competition, was just weeks away. It was the valley's most prestigious showcase, culminating in the coveted Golden Harvest Award, a prize that brought not only significant financial benefits, but immense, unassailable local honor. Thorne, using his considerable influence and deep pockets, engineered a dramatic challenge. He publicly announced a direct, head-to-head competition for the Golden Harvest, pitting his own meticulously cultivated crops against those of Elijah Vance's farm, now under Naomi's care. He deliberately chose a plot of land for Naomi to cultivate that was known as the Widow's Weep, notoriously barren and resistant to cultivation, ensuring the challenge was subtly rigged against her. He then stacked the judging panel with his allies, making sure any unconventional methods would be scrutinized mercilessly. The challenge was set to unfold in the very heart of the county fair, the central exhibition arena. This vast open space, usually reserved for livestock parades and carnival acts, was transformed into a symbolic battleground. Raised platforms displayed the competing crops, bathed in the harsh, unforgiving sunlight. For Naomi, in her simple, homespun dress, stepping into this arena was a profoundly disorienting experience. She felt every eye on her, 1,000 gazes dissecting her every move. The air hummed with hushed whispers, the rustle of expensive silk and rough homespun, and the faint disdainful murmurs from the more traditional folk. She was acutely aware of being an outsider, a black woman challenging the established order in a world where prejudice was a silent, ever-present force. This was no quiet field. It was a coliseum, meticulously prepared for either her spectacular rise or her crushing humiliation. As Naomi stepped onto her designated plot of the Widow's Weep, she was acutely aware of her profound solitude. Elijah Vance, though steadfastly supportive, stood at the periphery, his face a mask of concern, unable to directly intervene. The local farmers, even those she had helped, kept a cautious distance, their loyalties still divided by Thorne's influence. And there, positioned prominently in the front row, a triumphant, almost predatory gleam in his eye, was Mr. Cyrus Thorne. He stood arms crossed, a smug smirk twisting his lips, and openly taunted her. "What's wrong, city girl? Is your magic tea not working on real dirt?" he boomed, ensuring his derision carried across the arena. He offered unsolicited, wildly incorrect advice in a loud whisper. "It's too dry, you fool. Needs more water. Flood it." He even tried to subtly, almost imperceptibly, kick dust onto her carefully prepared plot when he thought no one was looking, a petty act of sabotage. He was not merely a passive observer. He was an active, sneering antagonist, determined to witness her downfall and revel in it. In this moment, Naomi felt utterly alone, armed only with her intuition, her grandmother's teachings, and the quiet strength of her own spirit, facing a coliseum of doubt and malice. Even Mr. Alistair Finch, who had arrived discreetly and positioned himself in a velvet-roped VIP section, maintained a poker face, his true thoughts hidden behind a facade of impartiality, observing Lena with a silent, intense curiosity. The pressure mounted further as the fair's master of ceremonies, a man clearly indebted to Thorne, boomed out the rules. "And to ensure a true test of skill, ladies and gentlemen," he declared, his voice echoing in the vast hall, "we are imposing a strict, unprecedented constraint. The Golden Harvest plot will be judged not only on yield and quality, but also on its ability to withstand an immediate simulated drought condition, beginning in precisely 1 hour. Competitors must prepare their plots to survive this, or face disqualification." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. This was unprecedented. A sudden, unseasonable drought was a constant threat on the plains, and this challenge, a direct replication, was designed to exploit the very vulnerability of Naomi's unconventional methods, forcing her to innovate under extreme, impossible time pressure. The clock began its relentless count. Naomi stepped onto her designated plot. She didn't rush, didn't frantically dig or plant. Instead, she moved with a quiet intensity, her small frame radiating a profound focus. She knelt, her fingers gently sifting the barren soil of the Widow's Weep, feeling its texture, discerning its hidden stories. She brought her ear close to the ground, almost as if listening to the earth's silent whispers. She studied the faint, resilient weeds stubbornly clinging to life, analyzing their root structures and nutrient needs. She ignored the whispers from the crowd. "What's she doing? Is she talking to the dirt?" And Thorne's mocking laughter. She was in her element, a silent communion with the land. She spent a full 15 minutes simply observing, her gaze traveling from the sun-baked surface to the subtle, almost imperceptible signs of life beneath. Her knowledge of botany wasn't just theoretical, it was visceral. She recognized the faint, silvery sheen on certain mineral deposits as a sign of specific nutrient deficiencies. She detected a slight, almost imperceptible tremor in the air that spoke of rising temperatures and dwindling moisture. Her mind, like a finely tuned instrument, absorbed every nuance, building a mental schematic of the plot's unique challenges. Then she began to work. Instead of planting conventionally, she used a specialized trowel to dig a series of deep, narrow trenches, almost imperceptible from the surface, creating a subterranean network of irrigation. She mixed a concoction from a small pouch she carried, not commercial fertilizer, but a blend of crushed charcoal, finely ground eggshells, and dried powdered kelp, a natural amendment from her grandmother's journal designed to boost microbial activity and improve water retention. She then carefully planted her selected seeds, not in rows, but in small strategic clusters, each cluster surrounded by specific companion plants designed to provide shade, repel pests, or enrich the soil. She even placed small, smooth river stones around the base of each cluster, not for decoration, but to help retain moisture and regulate soil temperature. These were all techniques gleaned from her grandmother's ancient wisdom, methods that defied the conventional, superficial farming practices of the day. 55 minutes passed. 56. The simulated drought began, triggered by a powerful hidden fan system that mimicked dry, scorching winds. The other plots, meticulously cultivated by traditional methods, already showed signs of wilting. Thorne's plot, though still green, seemed to struggle against the sudden artificial dryness. But Naomi's plot, the widow's weep, was different. The small, carefully placed plants, nestled within their protective microclimates of companion plants and river stones, their roots drawing moisture from the deep, narrow trenches, seemed to resist the onslaught. Their leaves, though slightly dulled, remained firm, their stalks unbowed. The crowd, initially restless, fell silent, their collective skepticism giving way to a dawning, incredulous awe. Thorne's triumphant smirk began to waver, replaced by a look of bewildered frustration. Lena, her face streaked with dirt and sweat, stood up straight, a quiet confidence radiating from her. She had met the challenge, not with brute force, but with an exquisite understanding of nature's delicate balance. The ultimate test was far from over, but the tide had undeniably begun to turn. Her unwavering determination shone through the quiet intensity of her focus, a tiny beacon of genius in a sea of skepticism, ready to face the climax. The air in the county fair's central arena crackled with an almost unbearable tension. The digital clock above Naomi's plot, mercilessly counting down the minutes of the simulated drought, seemed to tick with the heavy pulse of the onlookers' collective breath. 90 minutes had passed since the artificial winds began to blow, mimicking the plain's most feared adversary. The other competitors' crops, even Thorne's, showed clear signs of stress, their leaves wilting, their stalks drooping in defeat. But Naomi's plot, the widow's weep, against all conventional wisdom and the malevolent machinations of Cyrus Thorne, held strong. Her plants, nestled within their carefully constructed microclimates, their roots drawing from the deep moisture she had coaxed into the barren soil, stood firm, a vibrant, defiant green in the face of the arid assault. Naomi, utterly absorbed in her work, seemed oblivious to the world beyond the narrow confines of her plot. Her face was streaked with dirt and sweat, a smear of earth across her brow, but her eyes, bright with an unshakable focus, danced across her plants, assessing, nurturing. She moved with a quiet intensity, making minute adjustments, tucking a stray leaf, gently pressing a stone closer to a root. Each gesture was deliberate, a silent conversation with the living things under her care. The crowd, initially restless, was now frozen in a collective trance, their eyes fixed on the small figure moving with such unexpected purpose around the legendary, unforgiving plot. Even Cyrus Thorne, his face a mask of bewildered fury, had fallen silent, his usual bluster replaced by a dawning, terrifying realization. Mr. Alistair Finch, from his velvet-roped VIP section, leaned forward, a profound intensity in his gaze. With only 5 minutes left on the clock, a new, unforeseen disaster struck. A final, cruel twist engineered by fate itself. A sudden, violent gust of wind, far more powerful than the simulated drought mechanisms, roared through the arena. It ripped across the plots, tearing at leaves and bending stalks. On Naomi's plot, one of the crucial, carefully placed river stones, designed to protect a cluster of her most delicate heirloom corn plants, was dislodged. It tumbled, exposing the fragile emerging shoots to the full, devastating force of the artificial drought winds and the real, unseasonable gale. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Cyrus Thorne, who had been watching with a predatory gleam in his eye, let out a triumphant, guttural laugh, loud and chilling in the sudden, echoing silence. "Ha! Told you. Nature always wins against a fool's magic. Game over, little girl," he roared, his voice laced with venom and absolute certainty, believing her spectacular failure was now inevitable. For a terrifying, heart-stopping beat, it seemed all was lost. Naomi froze, her small body rigid. The wind shrieked around her, whipping her hair across her face. The sight of the exposed, vulnerable shoots, already beginning to wither under the sudden assault, sent a jolt of despair through her. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled with a flicker of panic. It was the familiar sting of helplessness, a fleeting memory of every time she had been underestimated, dismissed, every time her quiet confidence had been mistaken for weakness. The sheer impossibility of the situation pressed down on her. The unpredictable wind, the fragile plants, Thorne's jeering, the dwindling seconds on the clock. It was an insurmountable obstacle. Mr. Finch, too, slumped slightly in his seat, a visible sag of disappointment. His experiment had failed. But then, a surge of something fierce, something ancient, ignited deep within Naomi. It wasn't just determination. It was a primal refusal to be defeated, a resonant echo of the quiet strength that had always defined her, a whisper of Seraphina's resilience in her ears. Her eyes, which had flickered with panic, suddenly hardened, focusing with an almost preternatural intensity on the exposed plants. She recalled a specific obscure technique from her grandmother's journal, a desperate measure for extreme conditions. It was a long shot, an unorthodox solution rarely used, requiring immense precision and a steady hand, and a profound understanding of plant resilience. With a sudden, frantic burst of action, her movements a blur of practiced grace, Naomi pulled a small, almost invisible silk scarf from her pocket. With a speed that astonished the onlookers, she knelt, and using the delicate fabric, she meticulously wrapped each exposed corn shoot, creating a temporary, breathable cocoon. It was a makeshift solution, a fragile shield against the raging elements, but it was enough. She then quickly, with surprising strength, righted the displaced river stone, pressing it back into place, securing it with fresh soil. Her brow was furrowed in intense concentration, beads of sweat trickling down her temples, mixing with the dust. The clock ticked. 3 minutes. 2. 1. Finally, just as the timer hit 0, Naomi rose. She stood tall, her chest heaving, her small body radiating an exhausted triumph. She wiped her hands on her worn dress, her face smudged with dirt and a profound, quiet pride. She stepped back from her plot, her head held high, and gave a decisive nod to the judging panel. The master of ceremonies, visibly trembling, looked to the panel, then to Mr. Finch, who, now on his feet, gave a nearly imperceptible nod, his eyes fixed on Naomi. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC's voice boomed, thick with emotion, "the judges have made their decision." He paused for a dramatic, almost agonizing moment. "The Golden Harvest Award goes to Harmony Ridge Farm and to the extraordinary efforts of Naomi Vance." A moment of profound silence. The news hung in the air, electrifying. Then, like a dam bursting, the entire audience erupted. Cyrus Thorne's triumphant smirk, which had been frozen on his face, contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. His jaw dropped, his eyes wide and vacant, completely disconnected from the reality unfolding before him. He instinctively looked around for someone to share his disbelief, but every single face in the vast arena was turned towards Naomi, their expressions shifting from skepticism to absolute astonishment, then to unadulterated admiration. He stumbled backward, sinking into his seat, a small, pathetic figure, utterly defeated, his face paling to an ashen gray. His reputation, his authority, his very understanding of the world, had just crumbled into dust, mirroring the barrenness he had predicted for Naomi's plot. His defeat was complete, his malice utterly vanquished by the undeniable force of her genius. Mr. Alistair Finch, who had been rigid with tension, slowly rose to his feet. His meticulously maintained composure finally cracked, replaced by an expression of profound awe, a look of almost childlike wonder. He began to clap, slowly at first, then with increasing fervor, leading the thunderous standing ovation. The applause swelled, a roaring tsunami of sound that washed over Naomi, acknowledging not just her skill, but her extraordinary courage and unwavering spirit. Other farmers, initially dismissive, now stared in open-mouthed wonder, their weathered faces etched with dawning respect, their professional pride humbled by the sheer brilliance they had witnessed. Murmurs of incredible, a genius, and unbelievable swept through the arena, growing into a deafening roar of adoration. Faces shifted from disbelief to genuine admiration, many wiping away tears, swept up in the raw emotion of the moment. The sheer force of their collective recognition, the deafening applause, the spontaneous shouts of praise, validated Naomi's victory beyond any doubt. She hadn't just saved a crop, she had shattered expectations, defied prejudice, and proven the impossible. As Naomi, flushed with exertion and a quiet, blossoming pride, bowed to the roaring crowd, the setting sun caught the tarnished silver ring that she wore on her finger, now polished by her work and gleaming brightly in the golden light. It swung slightly as she moved, catching the light with a brilliance that seemed to illuminate the entire arena. Mr. Alistair Finch, his eyes still shining with emotion from the triumph, caught sight of it clearly. He froze. His eyes widened in recognition, a profound, almost dizzying realization dawning on him. He knew that ring. Its unique design, a stylized sunflower with intertwined roots, was utterly unmistakable. It was the signet ring of Seraphina, the root whisperer Jenkins, a legendary, almost mythical agriculturalist and herbalist who had helped establish some of the most successful, sustainable farms in the nascent West decades ago. Seraphina had been an innovator, a pioneer whose methods were ahead of her time, able to coax life from the most stubborn soils, a true whisperer to the earth. Finch had corresponded with Seraphina in his youth, deeply respecting her innovative methods and her quiet wisdom, though she had disappeared from public life after a devastating personal loss, presumed to have retired or passed away. He had even tried to seek her counsel years ago for a struggling agricultural venture, only to find she was no longer reachable. The ring, gleaming on Naomi's finger, confirmed her lineage. She was Seraphina Jenkins's granddaughter, inheriting not just her unparalleled agricultural genius, but also the quiet dignity, profound wisdom, and unassuming brilliance that had defined her. This revelation, hitting Finch with the force of a physical blow, elevated Naomi from a surprising talent to a living legend, the direct, rightful heir to an almost mythical agricultural legacy. The black mail-order bride, rejected for her color, was, in fact, royalty in the world of true land stewardship, a prodigy whose quiet knowledge surpassed generations of conventional wisdom. The thunderous applause for Naomi at the county fair echoed across Harmony Ridge, a vibrant testament to her undeniable genius. The news of her miraculous triumph over the widow's weep and the astonishing revelation of her lineage to Seraphina, the root whisperer, Jenkins spread like wildfire, carried by breathless gossip and awestruck journalists who flocked to the remote western town. Mr. Alistair Finch, a man of immense influence and impeccable reputation in both eastern and western circles, ensured the story was told with unflinching honesty, meticulously detailing Cyrus Thorne's petty machinations and Naomi's unparalleled brilliance. The Western papers, initially skeptical of an Eastern city woman, now ran sensational headlines, often featuring glowing praise for Naomi and unflattering exposés of Thorne's ruthless and prejudiced practices. For Cyrus Thorne, the public humiliation at the county fair was catastrophic, a downfall as swift and brutal as the drought he had tried to orchestrate. His carefully cultivated image as the valley's undisputed titan crumbled under the harsh glare of public scrutiny. News of his attempts to rig the competition, coupled with his blatant racism, spread like a virulent blight, infecting every corner of his once impenetrable empire. Mr. Finch, now a staunch and powerful ally of Naomi, used his immense influence to publicly denounce Thorne's unethical business practices and discriminatory tendencies. Suddenly, Thorne's vast network of connections evaporated. Lucrative land deals collapsed. Banks, once eager to lend, now called in his loans. His cattle, once the envy of the valley, began to lose value as buyers shied away from doing business with a man so thoroughly disgraced. His sprawling Thorne estates, once a symbol of his power, became a desolate, echoing monument to his hubris. Customers, disgusted by his arrogance and the public revelations of his cruelty, took their business elsewhere. His phone, once constantly ringing with offers and deals, now sat in eerie silence. The cattle baron title he so proudly flaunted withered under the harsh glare of community condemnation. He lost all his major contracts, his once loyal workers abandoned him for more ethical employers, and his vast wealth began to hemorrhage. He tried to reclaim his lost dignity, to bluster and deny, to threaten and intimidate. But his words now rang hollow, his reputation in tatters, reduced to a bitter, isolated man consumed by his own small-mindedness. He ended up financially ruined and socially outcast, a fitting end for his greed and prejudice. One crisp autumn morning, weeks after the challenge, Naomi was riding her horse near the edge of what used to be Thorne Estates, surveying the newly greening pastures. She saw Cyrus Thorne himself, a gaunt, defeated figure, emerging from his dilapidated ranch house. He looked older, his shoulders slumped, his face pale and drawn. He spotted Naomi, and for a long moment simply stared, the usual sneer absent from his lips. His eyes, once arrogant, now held a strange, almost pathetic mix of defeat and grudging awe. "Naomi," he rasped, his voice rough, devoid of its usual condescension. He cleared his throat, a flicker of something akin to genuine respect, or perhaps grudging awe, appearing in his eyes for the very first time. That was something. No one could have done that. Not like that. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable, unable to offer a full apology, but the simple, uncharacteristic admission, the quiet acknowledgement of her undeniable skill, and the sheer scale of her victory, was a testament to how profoundly she had shattered his rigid world. He finally saw her, not as a nuisance, an inferior or a threat, but as an undeniable force of nature, a master of the very land he had claimed to dominate. His defeat was complete, his prejudice shattered by the irrefutable truth of her talent. For Naomi, however, the county fair was not just a victory, it was a watershed moment, the opening of doors to an unimaginable future. Mr. Alistair Finch, utterly captivated by her genius and deeply moved by the discovery of her lineage to Seraphina, the root whisperer. Jenkins wasted no time in making an extraordinary offer. He invited Naomi, not merely as an employee, but as an indispensable partner, a protégé, into his private world of agricultural innovation. He saw in her the continuation of a legacy he had long admired. "Naomi," Mr. Finch had said, his voice now imbued with a paternal warmth she hadn't anticipated, as they sat in his opulent study at his western estate, surrounded by shelves of rare botanical texts and intricate agricultural diagrams. "Your grandmother, Seraphina, was more than a farmer. She was an artist, a visionary. She understood the very breath of the earth, the language of the roots, and you, my dear, you have her hands, her mind, her very spirit. She spoke of seeing beyond the topsoil, of listening to the subtle whispers of the coming season. You possess that gift magnified." He presented an unparalleled opportunity, a full partnership in establishing a groundbreaking, sustainable farm and agricultural research center on his vast, untouched western lands. He would provide the significant financial resources, the land, and access to his extensive scientific library and network of experts. Naomi, in turn, would oversee the design, implementation, and management of this ambitious project, a place where her innovative, eco-friendly methods could be fully explored and refined on a grand scale. This was not merely a job offer, it was an invitation to realize her grandmother's lifelong vision, to revolutionize farming in the West, and to become a leading figure in agricultural science. It was an acknowledgement of her intellectual and practical aptitude, a profound recognition of her worth that transcended any material reward. This was the true compensation, the ultimate prize, the freedom and resources to fully explore and develop her prodigious talent, to forge a legacy that would benefit generations. She would be surrounded by top scientific minds, given every tool she needed to become a master in her own right, building upon her grandmother's pioneering work. Naomi, her eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and burgeoning hope, accepted with a quiet solemnity. The offer was a revelation, a validation of the quiet passion that had long burned within her. Her small apartment in the city, the train journey westward, the challenges she had faced, all now felt like a chrysalis from which she was about to emerge, transformed. In the weeks that followed, Naomi found herself immersed in a new world, one that felt like a natural extension of her deepest desires. She spent hours on the sprawling acres of the new research farm, her small frame radiating focused energy as she directed machinery, analyzed soil samples, and experimented with new crop strains. Mr. Finch, having shed his initial subtle prejudices and demanding nature, became a true mentor, sharing stories of Serafina, recounting the profound respect he had always held for the root whisperer, and revealing how her wisdom had shaped his own early agricultural investments. He showed Naomi old photographs, faded blueprints of Serafina's unique irrigation systems, and handwritten notes on her revolutionary composting techniques, all preserved in his private archives. Naomi, in turn, shared her own insights, her intuitive understanding often surprising Mr. Finch's seasoned agronomists. She would quietly point out a nuanced flaw in a soil analysis, or suggest an alternative, more sustainable approach to a complex pest problem, always with the same unassuming clarity that had saved the golden harvest. She brought not just knowledge, but a profound empathy for the land itself. One evening, as the western sun set in a blaze of orange and purple, casting long shadows across the nascent fields of the new research farm, Naomi and Mr. Finch sat on a simple wooden bench, surveying the flourishing landscape. A gentle breeze rustled through the young shoots. "Your grandmother, Serafina," Mr. Finch began, his voice soft with reverence. "She always believed that the true genius of a farmer wasn't in merely taming the land, but in understanding its rhythm, in anticipating the whispers of a coming drought or the song of a healthy harvest. She saw the soul of the earth, Naomi, and so do you." Naomi looked down at the tarnished silver ring on her finger, now a familiar weight. She ran her thumb over its worn surface, the intricate sunflower and intertwined roots almost smooth from years of unconscious touch. "I used to just dream of it," she mused, her voice barely a whisper, referring to the vast open fields she had only imagined from her cramped city apartment. "I never thought I'd get to touch the land like this, to truly understand it, to make it bloom." She reflected on her arduous journey, the pain of the rejections, the quiet struggles, the bewildering kindness of Elijah, the surprising victory at the fair, and the profound, almost overwhelming joy of finally being seen, understood, and nurtured for who she truly was. The solitude that had once defined her was now a choice, not a necessity. The internal growth was profound. She was no longer just a black mail-order bride rejected for her color, but a burgeoning agricultural prodigy, recognized and revered, stepping fully into her legacy, a woman who had found her perfect partner in life and in the land. 10 years later, the name Dr. Naomi Vance Jenkins resonated through the most esteemed echelons of agricultural science and sustainable land management, no longer whispered as a curious anomaly but pronounced with reverence. At 38, still remarkably young by any standard in her field, Naomi had achieved a level of mastery that belied her age, her reputation built on a profound understanding of agronomy, fused with an intuitive, almost spiritual connection to the earth itself. She had developed her own unique approach, seamlessly blending the timeless principles of her grandmother's traditional wisdom with cutting-edge environmental science and modern agricultural technology. She was a visionary, a pioneer, whose touch could resurrect barren lands and redefine the future of sustainable farming. Her personal office at the sprawling Thorne Vance Institute for Sustainable Agriculture, a gleaming testament to innovation and ecological harmony, now displayed a prominent, beautifully framed portrait of her grandmother, Serafina, her kind eyes mirroring Naomi's own. And always, on a delicate silver chain nestled against her skin, lay the silver ring, no longer tarnished but polished to a brilliant gleam, a constant luminous reminder of her heritage, the extraordinary path she had carved, and the profound journey she had undertaken to find her true calling and purpose. Naomi was not just succeeding, she was thriving, profoundly fulfilled, and radiating a quiet, unshakable happiness that touched everyone around her. Her journey, from the quiet desperation of a city apartment to the boundless plains of the West, had revealed a deep-seated truth about herself. Her purpose extended far beyond the cultivation of crops and the science of soil. It was about creating opportunities, about igniting the same spark of passion and potential in others that Mr. Alastair Finch had so generously ignited in her. With the unwavering support of Mr. Finch, who had indeed become a true grandfather figure in her life, Naomi established the Seraphina Jenkins Legacy and Innovation Fund, named in honor of her pioneering grandmother. This wasn't just another charitable endeavor. It was a comprehensive, deeply personal program dedicated to nurturing young talent, especially those from underprivileged communities, and girls who, like her, possessed an innate aptitude for STEM fields and agricultural sciences. The fund provided full scholarships to specialized technical schools, top-tier agricultural universities, and leading environmental research institutions, ensuring that financial barriers would never stifle burgeoning talent. Naomi personally spearheaded a robust mentorship program, taking on promising young students as her apprentices at the Thornvance Institute. She spent countless hours guiding them, patiently explaining the intricate details of soil microbiology, teaching them the subtle art of listening to a field's whispers, and encouraging them to see beyond the cold data to the very soul of the land. She shared her own story with raw honesty, the quiet struggles, the pain of rejection due to her race, the moments of profound doubt, and the ultimate triumph of embracing her true self and finding her purpose. She often emphasized that true success wasn't merely about individual achievement, but about the profound responsibility of lifting others, of illuminating paths for those who might otherwise remain in the shadows, their talents unseen, their voices unheard. Her work with the fund was not just philanthropy. It was a living embodiment of her gratitude, a deeply personal mission, and her unwavering commitment to forging a more equitable and sustainable future for all. She stood as a beacon of possibility, a living testament to the fact that brilliance knows no socioeconomic boundaries, no gender limitations, and that with the right opportunity and unwavering belief, potential can explode into genius, transforming lives and landscapes. The sun, streaming through the vast, environmentally conscious windows of the Thornvance Institute's state-of-the-art training facility, cast a warm golden glow on Naomi. She stood, not in formal academic attire, but in a practical, elegantly tailored jumpsuit, her confident posture reflecting years of hands-on experience and intellectual growth. Around her, a dozen young faces, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fervent curiosity, hung on her every word. They were from incredibly diverse backgrounds: inner-city youth, aspiring farmers from struggling rural communities, girls who had been told that agriculture was not for them. All were united by a shared passion for the intricacies of sustainable farming, their dreams as varied and vibrant as the crops they hoped to cultivate. Naomi pointed to a meticulously cultivated, living exhibit within the facility, a vibrant field of heirloom corn, flourishing under simulated conditions that replicated various challenging climates. Among them stood a single, magnificent plant of a unique, drought-resistant wheat strain she had personally developed, its golden heads shimmering under the light. This was her signature creation, a symbol of resilience and innovation. Every part of nature, Naomi explained, her voice clear and resonant, from the smallest microbe in the soil to the mightiest stalk of wheat, tells a story. And your job, as future agriculturalists and environmental scientists, is not just to manage the land, but to listen to those stories, to understand the harmony, the delicate balance behind every ecosystem. True mastery isn't just in what you plant, but in how you nurture, how you heal, and what you can inspire. She gestured towards the robust wheat plant, a testament to her profound understanding and tireless dedication. This very plant, she continued, a soft, contented smile gracing her lips, taught me that the greatest power isn't just in overcoming adversity, but in cultivating resilience, in growing new life from the seeds of past rejections, and in ensuring that the future flourishes for everyone. The final image, both powerful and poignant, encapsulated the entire journey. Lena stood in the heart of that thriving, vibrant field, her hand resting gently on the robust stalks of the heirloom corn, her touch tender, reverent. Her other hand, raised slightly in a guiding gesture towards the eager young faces before her, was adorned by the gleaming silver ring, now catching the golden light of a late afternoon sun. It seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, its intricate gears and knotwork, her grandmother's sunflower with intertwined roots, shimmering brightly, a silent testament to a legacy reborn, knowledge passed down, and dreams taking vibrant flight. The ring pointed not backward to the past, but forward, towards the boundless possibilities stretching before the next generation. It was a beautiful, profound image of abundance, community, and the enduring, transformative power of talent, compassion, and unwavering belief. It showed a future where the seeds of wisdom, once nurtured in solitude, now bloomed in a shared, verdant landscape, promising a bountiful harvest for generations to come. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.